Welcome to Radical Underdogs, and last time out I rebuilt an engine for the very first time and it did not go well. Well, the engine lasted 75 miles and then the engine started knocking once again. To take you through that, I'm going to hand you back to past Will.
Welcome back, we were at Snetterton yesterday running in the engine and this happened. Yeah, what is that? Yeah, unfortunately the rod knock has come back, or at least I think it's rod knock. I'm going to do everything, it's rod knock, but I'm going to do everything else to check that it's nothing. I've done compression tests, the compression is looking awesome. 200 psi, all 4 cylinders, plus and minus 5 psi, so within the tolerance of the machine basically. So really good compression, it's the best compression numbers I've ever had on one of these Mazda engines. For me, obviously those people get better, but for me. The camshaft looks a bit wobbly, just a putty, probably touching at straws. So I'm going to change out camshafts and all the tappets whilst I'm there because they're all a bit noisy as well. And I'm going to change the harmonic balancer. Again, got a spare engine, might as well try. I don't think it's any of those things, I think it's a rod knock that's come back. I'm going to try those things now, and then we're going to have to pull this engine out and see what's gone on again.
And as past Will predicted, that didn't really work out, and actually when I restarted it, it sounded worse than it did before, to be honest. Okay, so here's where we are with the car. The knock has continued. Everything I've tried has failed. I did a compression test and the compression numbers were brilliant. They were over 200 psi. So I really want to keep this engine if I can. It probably is the extra effort to make this work. Unfortunately, if I want to check anything, it's got to come out the car. To inspect the rod bearings, you need to drop the oil pan. You either need to drop the entire subframe or the engine needs to come out. And to be honest, with all the suspension set up and all the rest of it, it's probably just as easy to take the engine out of the car than it is to drop the subframe. So that is what I'm going to do. So what do I think has gone wrong? Well, my theory at the moment, and having consulted with people, thank you very much for people who have listened to my endless messages on this. I think that the piston rods are knocking against the crankshaft ever so slightly. It's nowhere near as bad as what happened at Silverstone when this engine came out of the car. And why do I think that is? Well, I think I made an error in putting this together. I measured up, as you would have seen in the video, the crankshaft bearings, the main bearings, and that was all on spec. And I think what I didn't do, I didn't measure the pistons when they went in. So I didn't measure the rod bearing clearances. And, well, those of you watching will say you're an idiot, and maybe that's true. So we will see what happens when this comes out of the car. Obviously I've not been lucky, and if that's the case, then hopefully not too much damage has been done. There were no sparkly bits in the oil, so I'm hoping I'm catching this at a very early stage. It literally developed, I lifted off the gas and coasted into the pits straight away, so it's not done any miles with it knocking. And I've obviously run it without any load just to check a few things in the garage, but no significant running with the rod knock. So I'm hoping that any contamination of bearing material is going to be pretty limited and mostly been caught by the filter. So here is what the plan is. Take the engine out, inspect the rod clearances. Hopefully there's some evidence in there, or the clearances are way out of spec or something. Hopefully I find something, some reason to suspect that's what's going on here. And I will change out the bearings for something with better clearances, so I have to buy some new bearings and fit those, and then hopefully just swap what's needed to be done, and I don't have to disassemble too much. I might, fingers crossed, not even have to take the head off. If I don't find any evidence that the rod's been knocking, I don't know what to do, to be honest. Clearly it's a nasty sound, you don't really want to be driving with it. It's less noticeable when it's at idle, but under load, yeah, it is really bad. So I don't know what I'm going to do if it's not that. But that's for something for future Will to find out. You will find out quite soon. I will find out in quite a long time, because it's going to take me quite a long time to do this. This is an evening after work, so I'm going to have to try and find time to do this. It's another expense I didn't really want. Probably going to have costs of the season coming up. It's not a cost I want to do, so I don't really want to spend huge amounts of money on this. I don't want to get extra work in, but hopefully it's just me this time, rather than any machine shop work or anything. But that's where we are. That's where we're going. Hopefully you can stick along for the ride. I don't know how this is going to turn out. Hopefully it turns out well. Those compression numbers were awesome. That's the main reason I'm persevering with this. If this was like 170, 160, 170 psi on the compression readings, then I'd probably just scrap this engine, or scrap the bottom end at least, and maybe use the top end on the old bottom end of the other machine, of the other engine that came out. So, yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do. But whatever's happening, this engine's coming out. So, a few long nights, maybe weekends over Christmas, and I've got Christmas coming up. So, some time over Christmas to sort that out. Those of you with a sensitivity to engine destruction, I do urge you to look away now, although it's probably why you clicked on the video. So let's have a look at what we found when we took apart the engine, and the engine filter specifically here. Finally got the oil filter cutter that's arrived, and it has confirmed, I think, what was pretty obvious already from the noises, but the chunks, I'm pretty sure, are not just normal wear material. From the ring bedding in process. This filter does an amazing job, by the way, because none of this is really visible in the oil in the head that I looked at the other day, but you can kind of see there's a lot of chunks. Anyway, there you go. Yeah, so this stuff is that bearing material then? Yeah. Pretty bad, isn't it? Yes. That's gone everywhere, isn't it?
I'm not going to lie to you. Yes.
Yeah. That's I'm going to have to fully rebuild it now anyway. Yeah. There you go. That's the answer. So how did this happen then? Well, you'll see coming up that we measured both the crank against a standard crank that's coming out of someone else's car and against the specs as well. Bear in mind that the clearances we're talking about for a sort of, the top and the bottom end are sort of 0.0 something millimeters. So to have something that's 0 point something millimeters out is like an order of magnitude. So yeah, let's listen to what the measurements actually were.
All right, 44.9.
44.9. 44.9 and 44. Well, the 44.7 is the one that was knocking, yeah?
Yeah, so that is.
The 0.2 out is a long way out.
If you go on to 2. So you've just seen me take it off there. I haven't undone it.
Yeah. Okay, and it's just loose, yeah. 44.7. What's that? 44.74. Yeah. So for those of you that know about engine clearances and that sort of thing, we'll know that 0.25 millimeters is quite a long way out, especially where for this engine the maximum wear limit is 0.1 millimeters, so it's more than double that limit. So I'm surprised it lasted as long as it did, to be honest. And that was just on one journal, so it must have been damage that was done the first time round, because it's not, I don't think, and that's, people correct me if I'm wrong, people don't just grind down one of the journals. But anyway, that meant that the bearing was absolutely destroyed. You saw in the first kind of separate clip there that it actually trashed all the other bearings, so they are all fit for the bin, and it meant that lots and lots of work needed to be done to basically make sure that all of that material was cleaned out of every single bit of the engine where the oil might have been. As I said, I was not too worried about the head because that's gone through the filter before it gets there, and the filter did an awesome job at picking it up, but the bottom end absolutely needs to be cleaned out, every single nook and cranny, and took apart the oil filter. Fortunately, the oil pump, I should say, took apart the oil pump. It fortunately didn't appear to be too badly damaged, so the oil pump went straight back in after having been cleaned. Repeating all the work that was done previously, not everything actually, obviously you didn't have to paint it again, and there are sort of a few bits and pieces I could leave connected, But yeah, lots of the work had to be repeated, and really the next bits of this, I'm not going to sort of take you through everything because it's just basically what you saw in the last video, which is basically putting together the engine again. But there was one real, so obviously I learnt and I made sure that I was actually measuring everything when I put it back together this time. And as I absolutely made sure that I was going to measure the rod bearings this time. So let's go back to Past Wheel and find out how that went. Okay, take 2 on the measurements, well, from breaking the last engine. And we seem to be good. I haven't measured these 2 rods. They'll be fine, I'm sure. No, actually we'll measure these. But this one on the rods are really tight. Is that too tight? Don't know. The mains are almost too loose, actually. I'd say that's pretty much bang on there. That's the kind of loosest as well. So for a new, it's the wear limit is here, so it's definitely above, well below the wear limit. So that's all right. I'm just worried about the. Maybe this one's a little bit better. I'm just a bit worried about the rod bearings being a bit too tight, but I think I'm gonna contact some people who know a bit better than I do, and we'll come to a conclusion. So after far too much time spent on this, I did actually work out why those rod bearings were a bit too tight. Back to Past Wheel. Bloody hell! They supplied the wrong ones. That's why it's so tight. Good thing I measured it. Jeez. Bloody hell. Right. That explains why the bearings are so bloody tight. Jeez. Right. Okay, take 2, take 3, whatever we're on now. So you heard that right. There was a computer error at the supplier. So when my order went through for standard bearing clearances, they actually supplied 0.5. And it was a computer error rather than a person error. So actually very similar to the errors we had back at the start of the year. When you'll recall, I was supplied with a fuel hose, which was not a fuel hose, and it was just an airline hose, and I fitted it without checking, and it then exploded on the racetrack and dumped fuel all over the engine bay. So if you haven't seen that, go back to one of the first videos from this year to have a look at that video. But for this supplier error, we went back to the supplier and they were very apologetic and supplied the correct bearings. Anyway, back to Past Wheel. Right, this time I think a little bit looser than standard. I think the standard takes you up to 0.038 millimeters, and this is, and it's slightly over the slightly over the 3.8. But certainly more than, or less I should say, than the 0.5. The wear limit, by the way, is 0.1, so we're well below any sort of in tolerance. This is slightly looser, I guess, than the standard rebuild, which I think for a race engine is absolutely fine. So that was a good thing I measured it, really. Although it basically was seized. I don't think I've caused any damage by using those oversized bearings, but leave a view in the comments. Maybe I've already run this engine, it's already trashed, but let's see. Let's carry on. This is top YouTube content, by the way. Just watching a guy do bearing clearances for an hour. Well, I've been doing it all day, but you've been watching it for long enough. Let's move on. And yeah, let's move on from that. And actually, it was very much a case of repeating what was done last time. So everything went a lot faster, having done this before. But as you know, for those of you that are wondering, it is a new to me anyway. New crank, new rods all around, and they were donated actually by Ian. You've seen him in the video quite a few times. So sort of once again, thank you to Ian for donating these parts to a worthy cause of Radical Underdogs. It is, I think, the only thing that's going to get me going again. I think that crank and those rods I simply do not trust anymore. I think they are destined to be some garage art for the foreseeable future. And this time round, putting together with blue sealant, which apparently is suitable. Don't worry about it. It was black before, blue this time. I just thought blue looked better. Anyway, back to Past Will to take us through where we're up to now, because we're well into putting this engine back in the car. And like I said last time, it was much easier with 2 people, but I'm trying it this time with 1 person. And yeah, a few issues, but broadly speaking, actually, I'm managing it. And to be honest, I would not have been able to do it without the device you can kind of see holding up the gearbox, which is really important, and also the device you can see holding up the engine as well. Putting the head back on, again, I could have just manhandled it back onto the engine, but I really didn't want to damage the head gasket. So I kind of used the engine crane for that as well. So yeah, that is probably I hadn't really thought about doing that before. And to be honest, it's probably a bit overkill because it's not that heavy, but it's heavy enough so that it's just a bit awkward to put on, especially with the intake manifold still on. And again, I didn't really want to be messing about taking that off, putting it on again, especially when it's so easy to kind of strip the threads in these aluminium kind of cylinder head and all the other sort of soft metal bits around. So I'm timing up again, and I'm going to put this back in the car, like I said, with the engine crane and the balancing bit as well with it as well. So back over to Past Will.
Okay, so it's getting really, really close now. I've bolted it into the transmission, but it is just not quite on the engine mount, and just trying to hit it a bit. If it can't be fixed with a hammer, those bolts are already in at the top. Trying to put some bolts in at the bottom, so I've got the lift up to the first safety. I don't really want to crawl underneath it though, I'm not massively keen on that, but I might have to man up and do that.
I wish I could say there was a trick to doing this. If there was, I didn't really discover it. it was just kind of perseverance, and eventually it kind of fell into the slots for the engine mounts after sort of rocking it around a bit. I don't think I damaged anything by manhandling it quite so much. So yeah, eventually it did go back in, and it was time to reconnect everything. Again, I'm not going to take you through all of that time lapse because it took quite a long time, but it's almost now time to see whether this engine starts.
All right, it's night time again. I think this is in, and there's a few things left to connect actually. One thing maybe. That we are, I think, ready to build up some oil pressure in this car. I'm pretty nervous about the whole thing, having spent many hours, days even, doing this. Get some pressure. Get some pressure. Get some pressure. Pressure, come on. Come on, pressure. I haven't got any pressure. Come on. Yes. There's some pressure. Not very much, mind you. Okay, we've got some pressure. It's good enough. Okay, let's now attach everything and give it a start. Oh, Jesus. I'm really nervous now. Got heart absolutely thumping. Will it start? Please start, please start. Yeah, come on! Come on! Okay, there's something sounding it's leaking, but just that. That was the only thing. Yeah, we got some oil coming off that. It started! Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh. Okay, don't worry about the smoke. The smoke's alright. We'll sort that out later. The main thing is it starts. I should probably check the Yeah, sorry, got oil pressure. Well, it would have been wrecked anyway by this point. Anyway, cool. Catch you again in the next one.